just having a great time after work, connecting, really making those relationships. So I'm so happy that y'all are here. Thank you for coming to another one of our CEO Peak Performance Partners events. We're going to introduce Eunice. She is here with the Sterling Club, and we're going to do a raffle tonight. And this raffle, right, will be a 10-day free membership trial here at the Sterling Club. Also, I'm going to do a huge plug real quick, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but for anybody who's interested in membership to the end of this month, what's the special offering?
We are currently waiving the initiation fees, so you're saving up to $5,000 by just joining the club.
Wow. And that's thanks to Peak Performance Partners. You're welcome. So, Patrick, will you please come draw a card?
Pick a good one. Winner's Kevin Hernandez. Yeah.
For 10-day free membership here at the club, come enjoy all the events.
And you're going to drive a white Corvette. Oh, yeah! Sweet! All right. United States.
Pilates. Tennis. Go-karts.
Yeah.
Oh! A new guest tonight?
Yes.
Where is she?
Who is any box?
Yo, we're going to go ahead and get our show kicked off tonight. Thank you again so much for coming. We really appreciate it. The bar is still open. Grab cocktails throughout the evening. I'm going to go ahead and get this show started. Here we go.
Now I get to introduce you to Peak Performance Partners. We're a company that has executives with over 200 years of combined experience working for publicly traded companies. Now I get to introduce you to Peak Performance Partners. We're a company that has executives with over 200 years of combined experience working for publicly traded companies such as Verizon, AT&T, and Wyndham Resorts, helping them drive millions in annual sales and creating efficiencies, which, you know, creates greater profits. We've also worked for privately owned companies, helping startup divisions within these companies achieve over $100 million in annual revenues. We've also, each of us, have owned our own companies. Not only do we know what it's like to sign the back of a check, we also know what it's like to sign the front of a check. And that is why we teamed up with the Alternative Board Worldwide, or as we like to call it, TAB. TAB is an organization that is in over 23 countries. It's been around for 30 years, helping business owners and business leaders achieve their ultimate dream. What we do is we put together peer advisory boards made up of business executives from non-competing industries, where we meet once a month and we talk about challenges and opportunities. And then we help each other by going from our background and giving collective wisdom. Can you imagine having 250 to 300 years of experience helping you as you're making decisions? Some of the topics that often come up in some of the boards are this: employee development, new markets, growth strategies, cash flow issues, and legal matters. Guess what? All organizations have these. In addition to the board meetings where we meet once a month, we also do coaching. This is where we come one-on-one with you and your organization. We talk about a great plan for yourself. What is your mission? What's your vision? What's the culture? And what's your brand promise? In addition to the Alternative Board, we also have a consulting division. This is where we come in and do a deeper dive with you and your organization. What we do is we're going to create a gap analysis. We're going to see where's the place that we can spend the least amount of time to make the greatest impact. We're going to look at marketing. We're going to look at your sales process. We like to follow the client through the journey of how did they get to know about you, and then how did they become a client, and then how was their journey? Are there any gaps in that process that we can make better to make them happier, generating higher revenue and greater profits? A lot of times this will include leadership development. We have a great plan where we come in and help your team become more accountable and make sure that they're following up, making sure that the meetings that they're attending are meaningful. Then we'll start to review the financials. Helping business owners identify blind spots within themselves and their organization, that is what we enjoy. You have a formal exit strategy?
Is your management team aligned with you?
Are you burnt out?
Do you believe in your mission statement?
Do you know the fair market value of your company?
Do you know your KPI?
Can you leave your business for 30 days?
Is your operating agreement current?
Are you susceptible to depreciation recapture?
Did a few or maybe all of these questions resonate with you? If they did, you're not alone. We are the trusted advisor for a lot of business owners and business leaders, coming up with action plans and strategic plans in order to accomplish and attack some of these issues. That's what we do.
We do that by putting in proper leadership teams, systems, controls, and procedures, proper financial reporting, operating agreements that properly reflect the operation of the business, and an asset protection plan to help you, the owner, in the event of an unfortunate catastrophe or an issue and risk, that you are protected.
We help bring business owners together in a safe environment so they can share best practices. And the way we like to look at it is those experiences. Those shared experiences really lead to bottom line results. Hear from some of our business owners on what we've helped them with.
As an entrepreneur, young businessman, I think that the value is invaluable. The message and the lessons that I've learned have really helped me catapult my business to a whole nother level.
It's fun to come in and get out of it's your blinders that you have on. And I've been in business for 25 years now. I come in with a certain pool of knowledge, but I still don't see everything from every angle.
The views that I've received from you personally and the other guys on the board have really helped me as far as direction as the CEO and visionary of this company.
Anybody that has success in their life has a coach. Michael Jordan had a coach.
Struggles that you're having have already happened to these individuals or something along those lines. So rather than taking 3 months to solve that problem, you can get it done in that afternoon.
You know, the quality of people that are here, the business owners, the visionaries, and what everybody's doing. So to be able to connect with those people and also learn a little bit from the speakers that are here, it's just been fabulous.
Anyone thinking about joining this amazing platform, definitely do it, because it's going to enhance not only yourself, but your business and everything outside of your business. So definitely come on in.
The fact that you guys have that kind of relationship, I'm like, that's who I want to be a part of.
A lot of very good information. I've been working with Steve for over a year now, with a couple of my other businesses as a consultant. He's done an incredible job in helping us reach our goals and getting to that next level.
Every time I try to work something out and something gets pushed back for whatever reason, not enough groups or whatever, I'm able to come to this room and I'm able to express those frustrations and be able to find that there's fruit somewhere underneath there. That's one of the biggest takeaways. It's helped me in my sanity.
We all have to adjust because change is inevitable, but growth is a choice.
Well, now we're going to get on with tonight's event. We hold our CEO events monthly. I'd also like to invite you to tune into our Are You Killing It podcast. This is where we talk to local business owners and find out what are some secrets to how they're killing it. Our goal tonight is to provide an environment for business leaders and owners to connect with new people, reconnect with old friends, and get information from industry experts. We also have a video production team. Treston, he's the guy behind the camera. Treston, wave hi to everybody. Does your company have its own video? Something that explains your product or service in such a high professional manner that everybody's going to want to do business with you? Have you ever thought about employee onboarding and doing training videos? What's so important about a training video is, guess what? You get to control the environment and the message that all your new employees are saying. We love being a part of this business community. Industry leading. Have you ever thought about that term? One of the things we do is we help companies identify what are industry leading companies and how did they become that. What I want to encourage you to do is this: don't go alone. Use our 200 years of collective experience to help you and your organization. There's an African proverb that we often refer to. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Please, this business community is made up of companies that are killing it because they're going together. I want you to be one of those. Come join us.
To get blown away, so I set the bar a little higher than I did last time. I was like, I don't know what we're gonna get last time. Now I know. So, but Howard he is a brand disturber. Okay, that's what he does, and I'm super excited to have him. He will, during his presentation, he'll show you some of the companies that he works with. But it is, we're blessed to have you. Thanks for coming out once again. He's out of LA and he gets to come out to the oven. It's a little warm out here. Yeah, but it's dry.
It's dry.
Just like that. All right, so without any further ado, Howard, I'm going to hand the mic over to you. Give it up for Howard Lynn.
The wireless is on, right? The wireless on? Yes.
Well, the wireless, but that's just for that.
Okay, got it. Okay. First, I'm going to pass this around. If people could sign in, I appreciate it. Let me get that on this side, get that going. And I'm going to get this side going on this side. Thank you. Okay, so we got a lot of content to cover. I had a good fortune to speak with Robert's group this morning. But we got a lot to cover here, so I'm going to get going. So this is why I'm here, is to deliver world-class applicable content so you can see how things actually come together in the real life is when it comes to business, and specifically when it comes to growing and scaling your business and brand, okay? For greater wealth and opportunity. So it's about how do you scale and how do you create greater wealth. So I always start off with everybody here has their superhero character. Mine happens to be from my father being a whole brain thinker, so I think differently than just thinking from the left-hand side or right-hand side of the hemisphere, and able to put together new solutions that haven't been thought of before. That's my superpower. So left side being strategy, technology, and ROI, and the right side being innovation, creativity, okay, and then branding. So I started 35 years ago in my business, and what I was, and I still am, is a disruptive solution provider. And what that means is that I disrupted different industries that pretty much touched everybody here. For example, I didn't explain it this morning, but how many of you here heard of the World Wide Web? Okay, so I was on a team with Access Media to create the marketing posters to introduce and lobby it for the world. Okay, that was one of our projects. Disney, we brought Lion King to stage. It's grossed $9 billion now worldwide. It's still growing. City of Santa Monica is one of the most premier cities now. I was on the board for the Convention Visiting Bureau, bringing in from other country businessmen and women to do business specifically in Santa Monica, which is the invention of 3rd Street Promenade. Okay, and then for like Philips was really introducing and branding DVDs to take over VHS and Beta. Remember VHS and Beta were at a war, and then they went away out of the blue? We were responsible for branding that. So we did a B2B play and a B2C play, business to business, making sure there was a standard between the DVDs as far as the interface, and then also getting to introduce the consumer how to use a DVD, okay? Sounds simple, it was very complex. So those are just a few examples here. So what we've done and what's really important is positioned. Okay, so one of the key elements I talked this morning with Robert, that some of the elements is a brand promise, right? Positioning is also extremely important when it comes to branding, which I'll get more involved and talk more about that. But we produce multi-billions of dollars in revenue, brand value, and equity. Two things I'm gonna talk about that's always left out is value and equity. And when it comes to moving your company and scaling it, you gotta look at value and equity. So 25 years ago, after working with the Fortune 500 representing them, I had a revelation that I really wanted to change this, why 95% of companies fail or become stagnant in the first 2 to 5 years. So then it took me 15 years to design a business model that was universal for B2B, B2C, and B2G. B2G meaning government, business to government, for product, service, and information, and anywhere you are in your business cycle, whether you're a startup or going through an exit strategy, franchise, or licensing, okay? So I worked on a model that would allow me to invert that number to successful businesses. And the reason for this is because I have a strong philosophy: with a strong economy, everybody wins. In a strong economy, everybody wins. And so that's my commitment, okay? So there are two ways to create a brand: from the hip or by design. 99% of companies are doing it from the hip. They think they're hiring a branding person when someone says they're doing branding, and they're not. They're doing marketing, they're doing PR, they're doing graphic design, they're doing one aspect of branding. And I'll show you how complex, but how important branding is. And there's by design, okay? And that's what, of course, what we do. So the problem with most brands is that business owners are trying to do their own branding. The second problem that I found is that they're hiring the wrong service providers because they don't have the knowledge base of really what it takes to build a brand, okay? And there's more competition out there in every space, including branding. People say they're doing branding because it became popular of the turn of the century, but they're not doing branding. And I'll explain it in more detail. So here's the problem: the sequence to a generic brand. This is where 99% of companies fit. So you have a product or service or information, and you want to bring it to the world. You hire a graphic designer that's actually had like schooling, or you hire a desktop publisher. And a desktop publisher, the distinction is this: they pick up a computer and they're doing design work. Some of them are very good, but still it's not branding, okay? Then from the website, let's say you create a website, you create a logo, and now you use the megaphone to market and PR, create sales, advertising, social media. But guess what? You forgot the most important ingredient, okay? And I'll explain what that is. So this is what you end up doing. You end up going in the marketplace and you end up grabbing up some market share. But then let's say that you find out down the road that you forgot a particular type of brochure that you really need to represent your company, or a sales deck. So you go back to the drawing board, and honestly, it's not fitting into any equation because there's no foundation that's been laid. There's no system you've created, okay? So what I call is a fragmented identity. You look like different companies from your website to your brochure. You are telling different stories. You're using different fonts, different colors, different images to represent your company, and none of those are a fit to the potential of your company, and especially when it comes to the valuation of your company, okay? So here's the right sequence that we created, which leads to growing and scaling your business, okay? First, you have your product and service information. The second thing is, one of the things that we do is we combine business development and branding. So we look at business models, and we look at how the business model could actually have more exponential growth than what you're looking at, by disrupting what you're doing in the industry, by being very creative. It's like Robert, it's like Einstein says, what's more important than knowledge is, imagination, right? Everything created around us is through imagination. You have to create and think differently. The second thing then is to wrap a brand around that potential of your business. And then the third component to this is now identifying your customer and knowing how you want to reach them and what you want to say, okay? There's a sequence to this. So that's the first thing, is looking at the business model. The second major component is now building an identity system to reflect how you want to be seen in the world, meaning the right name, the right tagline, the right look and feel, the right tone, the right voice. All these things make a huge difference. This is why Fortune 500 companies become Fortune 500 companies, is because they're doing things strategically, and they're looking at things from the standpoint of science as well as knowledge, okay? Then after that, you start to spread the word through marketing, PR, sales, and social media, okay? So again, the biggest part that most companies leave out is a business model, a really fruitful business model, and a brand identity to reflect that business model to the consumer. You get that? Then what happens is now you actually end up with a lot more clients and customers, because now you're looking at channels that you had not thought of before from the business model, and an identity that actually could create trust a lot faster in the mind of the consumer. Thank you. Okay? Does everyone get this? Show of hands if you get it. Okay, if you have any questions, let me know. But this is really important to get. Again, most people leave out the brand identity system because they're going graphic design and saying, oh, I do branding. That's not branding. That's graphic design. Or agencies going, oh, we do branding. That's not branding. That's advertising. It's all the parts that make up the whole. They all have to fit together. And then they're broadcast through the different channels of marketing, sales, and advertising, PR, and so forth and so on. Okay? So just to give you an idea of why branding is such highly specialized, is that brand strategists, it usually takes 7 years to master strategies. Like, what is the vision of the company? For an example, the vision is what legacy you're leaving behind. The philosophy is why you're in business to begin with. You probably heard that book called, Start With Why. It's a brilliant book. It's all based on one aspect of the brand, which is philosophy, okay? Why is that important nowadays? Because the younger generation want to connect and belong to something that moves them. You got the baby boomers, you got the X generation, you got the Y generation. They all think differently and they all respond differently. Most companies are not creating the right message for the target market because they haven't even identified the right target market and they don't understand the profiling. Does that make sense? Okay? Brand director usually takes 15 years to master because it's really looking at the totality that makes up the whole of all the parts that make up the sum, right? So that means the tagline, the right name. Like a lot of clients, what we have to do is create a different name because the name has a limitation itself from the standpoint of growth. But we'll get into that, okay? And all these pieces need to tell one story. Like when you hire a graphic designer, you go, okay, I need a website, I need a brochure, okay? And then you hire another company to do the marketing, another company to do the website or a brochure or a trade show booth or packaging or product design. It starts to look like all these different companies, not one single company, because you haven't started with a strategy to define who you are. You have to define who you are first before you create an identity to wrap around that. Does that make sense? Okay? And then brand management is now when you want to create new stores, franchise, and licensing, now that you have a system in place, now that you have the ability to grow. You can't grow without a system. It's like the inside of your business, like what Robert does, right? It's like you got to figure out first, what is your system internally of your business? It's the same difference for the identity to build a system for growth. Like Apple, with all their products related to have a certain look and feel that's identifiable as saying that's an Apple product. It's all based on minimalist design, which he got from the Japanese philosophy, which is minimal design. And the whole principle around it is to have it where it's user-friendly, that anybody can adapt to without having to understand programming, and becomes an extension of that person's way of lifestyle. Does that make sense? Okay? So he really wanted to make a super simple interface, and that's why he created, why the I, where there's like iPhone, it stands for integration. Software, hardware, operating system. It's still the only computer company that does this. Now, the other companies haven't figured it out yet. But that's his philosophy. You see that? So everything he brings to market, and now of course he's passed away unfortunately, but the company itself, everything they bring has that same philosophy that fits in that system. Okay, that's how hotel chains are built too. They're good ones. They're based on a strong philosophy. This is applicable for any size company if you want to do it right, without having to go to the drawing board like every year. If you get the right principles in place, it allows for growth. Okay, so the biggest asset for your company growth, scaling, and value is your business model and your brand. Your business model and your brand, okay? And I'll explain that more when I show some case studies.
Go back to that 1 second. I want to highlight one thing.
Yes, sir.
The keyword value.
Yes.
Right, we work on exit strategy, talking a lot about value for our business owners. And I really like what you said that with scaling and bringing value is the model and the brand.
Exactly. A really good branding firm, most of them, which is great, they're really focused on aesthetics. In my opinion, that's only half the equation. The other half is business. What's the return on investment? How are you going to increase its evaluation? And when you put those together, like the big Fortune 500, like Coca-Cola, Nike, to a small company, which we talked about that earlier, Robert, is like putting like a 12-cylinder engine in a 4-cylinder car in a small company, because you're putting the best of practices in place to begin with that allows for maximum growth in the shortest period of time. It's a science. It's a proven methodology, okay? So you're exactly right. And that's the part that gets left out quite a bit, is the equity and the value, which I'll define a little bit further, okay? So again, the brand is not the logo, product, or service, because a lot of people in the old days go, oh, branding is, you know, a logo. No, it's not, okay? It is, if it's done right, it will be the most important asset that you own, but that's not what a brand is. When people go, oh, I want to be a household name, guess who owns the brand? People do, customers do. They own the image. Let me give you an example, okay? So it's not what you say, it's what everyone else is saying. You could say all you want about who you are, but if it's not being received on the receiving end and consistent to how you want to be perceived, guess what? You're not building a brand that's actually world class, you're building something that's working against you, unfortunately, okay? So it resides in the heart and the mind of the consumer, and I say it's the expectation matched to the experience. You got to create an expectation, and then you have to have an experience that matches that expectation. The question is, what expectation are you going to create in the mind of the consumer that's going to differentiate you from everybody else? It's not easy to figure out, but is it necessary? Absolutely. Otherwise, you get stuck as a generic brand. You get stuck as a commodity. Now you're based on price, not value, and therefore you can't raise your price because people don't understand the distinction between you and a generic brand. So let's just say, you know, if you had a chance to win $1 million on a racetrack, right? Would you drive a brand new 2021 Hyundai van or a brand new Ferrari 2020? How many people would choose the Ferrari? Okay, pretty obvious choice, right? Here's the thing. Most people in this room haven't driven either of these vehicles. That's how strong a brand can be if it's done right. You already have an expectation of what's going to be the faster vehicle. Now, once you get in that Ferrari, it better be fast, right? Otherwise, you just diluted the value of that brand. You see how this is working, you guys? But you first have to paint that picture in the mind of your customer of why you're the only choice, why your product, your service, your information is the only choice for them. How are you going to differentiate, okay? So your brand is the sum total of the impressions customers have gained from their interaction or the lack of interaction with your company, okay? They say it takes about 7 to 15 contact points between a company and a consumer where a consumer starts to trust you, okay? So first people need to know who you are, then they need to like you, and then they start to trust you. Most companies go right into, oh, we're just gonna sell them without the trust, and guess what? They push you away. That's old school thinking, that's push marketing. Pull marketing is when you get an endorsement from third party, for example. That's why if you buy stuff on Amazon, you're probably reading all the reviews, not just what the company's saying. Is that so? Okay? That's the advantage of social media, and that's the advantage of reviews. And most social media is completely used wrong, by the way. When I'm reviewing people's social media and their website, totally wrong. It's out of sequence, and they're using the wrong media to create the wrong picture in the mind of the consumer. They're creating the wrong picture rather than the right picture, okay? There's a sequence to this. So I always say the business doesn't run the brand, the company experience does. So when you get in a car, let's say a BMW, and you like the BMW, right? The experience is, the idea behind BMW, real quick, between the 100 to 200, 300, 400, 500, is pretty brilliant. It's all about inspiring to the next class of vehicle when you make more money. Does that make sense? It's the entry point, then you get sold on the entry point, and then they have you as a long-term customer How many of you in this room are thinking for long-term play for your customers? Okay? You gotta strategize with the end in mind and reverse engineer, look at upsells, downsells, cross-sells, and partnerships. Okay? There's so many ways to earn the trust of a consumer to stay a lot longer with you. So at least 81% of consumers need to trust the brands before they buy. So let's just give you an example. Let's say that you're in a foreign country, like say Russia, and then you're going down the aisle and you happen to see Coca-Cola and everything else is foreign. Or let's say Asia, okay? And everything's in a different language, right? But you see that Coca-Cola, the likelihood of you going for the Coca-Cola versus a brand that you have never seen before is highly likely you would trust that brand, Coca-Cola, to pick up and drink. That's why we need brands. Brands need us as much as we need them because it shortcuts us in a decision-making process. It happens in a very subtle way, but when it comes to hotels, when it comes to networks, the list goes on. What you're trying to do is build trust in the mind of the consumer while you're the choice for that particular customer. But again, you got to first figure out who you are, what you stand for, and who your customer is, and why you're a connection and what kind of connections you want to create for that customer, okay? So you got to build trust. Trust, another way to put it is trust is the ultimate shortcut to a buying decision. If you create trust, what happens is that decision making is a lot quicker in the mind of the consumer, and there's a multitude of ways of doing that, okay? So just to give you an idea, the brand mark anchors the story behind the brand. Branding is not the logo, but it's 5% of branding, but it's the most important asset if it's done right, okay? So what I mean by this is if I showed you this swoosh, you probably all know what industry they're in, right? Apparel. And you probably know what quality they stand for, right? Which is the famous athletes use Nike, and you have the opportunity to use it as well, so just do it. That's how they got the tagline, by the way. Is that you don't have no excuse. Just get off your ass and do it because you got this availability to you as a customer. So all that meaning that they've created through their advertising, their marketing, through their stores, through the experiences, and their sales, it's all creating images in your mind. When you see that swoosh, it registers what they stand for. You seeing how this is working, you guys? There's a lot of psychology in this, okay? A lot of science. The point being is it works, okay? So just to show you, I didn't show you this morning, Robert, but here's some transformational. A logo, okay, a lot of times it's like, oh, I'll get my brother-in-law to design it, or get my friends to design it, or graphic designer to design it, right? So this company here, they have assisted living nurses. They place in assisted living in-house homes, right? And they're very high end. So on a 10-point scale, their value and the price point is 8, 9, and 10, 10 being highest. But they had a problem growing. They go, we can't grow more than 2 offices. We've been trying for over a decade now. We want to create an exit strategy. We want to sell around the world. What's our problem, right? So I'm just going to show you the tip of the iceberg. We designed everything for them, from the website, the brochure, the strategies, everything that had to do with them. But I'm just going to show you the brand mark. This is the final brand mark that we came up with. And we came up with probably, 300 different concepts. What we found out from the strategy session is that they place a rose at the foot of the bed every time they make the bed. That's how high end they are. So we said, wow, we could use that as part of our storytelling within the mark, and it gives us a better opportunity to separate our mark from everybody else that's out there, because everyone's kind of doing the same thing, and get a very high look and feel with the right font. This is like an Italian font. And we catered the name the Elder Care Specialist, so it's really clear who they are, okay? And some of the criteria is what makes a brand mark. Can it reduce the size of a dime? Can it work in black and white? Can it work in embroidery? Is it trademarkable? And is it distinguishable from all the competition? You see how you have to map all this out? Okay, if you want to create a mark that lasts for a long time, because when you have to redo your logo, when most people have to redo a logo to a mark, it's building equity and value over time. So let's just say, Ricky, you own, let's say, Apple, right? And you go, hey, Howard, I'll give you all the distribution, I'll give you all the retail, I'll give you all the manufacturing. You're not going to get the name or the mark. Because you find that it's not worth it. So then it becomes a commodity, but I'm just showing you it becomes a commodity. It's all that meaning built into it over time. There's a whole strategy around this. Okay, if you really want to go global, if you really want to be world class, even as a small startup company from ground zero, when you think this way, you're going to get where you want to go a lot quicker. But it is a process. So there's a difference between graphic design and brand design. Graphic design is more or less putting out flyers. Oh, we need a flyer, we need a website. Brand design is when you're really thinking strategically how you're going to differentiate from your competition, what makes you unique, and what's authentic to you, regardless over time. It's a whole different set of attributes and a whole different way of thinking. Okay? There's a lot more substance. Anyways, WSS, they're about, and I'll show you this case study, they're about to collapse in 2008. They have 52 retail stores. They're here now in Vegas. We turned them around and they're worth, they did over $1 billion now. A company that was about to collapse and thinking of going online. Flying Dutchman can grow for 40 years. After we got done, I'm just showing you the tip of the iceberg. We designed their stores, we designed all their billboards, their websites, everything else. The point being is that they created 5 franchises in 3.5 years. This is after they couldn't grow for 40 years. Because 1, they didn't have the right business model. 2, they didn't have the right brand to wrap around it. And 3, they didn't know their client, how to market to their client. And what media, what channels to use, okay? And the list goes on, just showing the transformation of these different logos to brand marks, okay? So we design brand marks that transcend all language barriers, okay? And I didn't show you before how Apple stumbled, Starbucks had stumbles, and all the big companies have stumbled. They had not figured out the solution of what makes a logo to a brand mark. Now here again, the mark is only 5% of the equation, but the most important intellectual property you could own if it's done right. The name, the mark, the color that you choose, the font that you choose, and the tagline. That's what I call brand icon, okay? So it's a set of assets. So how do you accelerate the brand value? Brand value has to do with what's on the balance sheet. Brand equity has to do with the intangible and tangible in the mind of the consumer. Tell me if I'm talking too fast, by the way. Okay, so assets linked to your brand's identity adds value provided by your service, product, or information to the customers. Assets linked to your brand identity. You have to have the right identity first to build that value, okay? And to make it an asset, so when it comes to selling your company, it has to have a higher valuation than just the balance sheet itself, but future gains, okay? This is what makes the stock market move. So let me give you a quick example. If for Coca-Cola, if it wasn't for this value, okay, the equity and also the value, but I'm talking about the equity now in the mind of the consumer. If it wasn't for the color red that distinguished it in the cola space, and Pepsi owns blue, if it wasn't for the shape that's highly identifiable as part of their intellectual property, if it wasn't for their secret sauce, right, that they keep as a trade secret, okay, and then all their advertising marketing around open happiness, it has not changed. They're smart. They're keeping to their philosophy, okay? Globally, without all these attributes, it'd be worth $60 billion. But because of all these attributes that are tied in the mind and heart of the consumer, it's worth $120 billion. So here are just a few of the characteristics that build that brand value. And I don't want to overwhelm you, but this is science to this. Brand image is what you own, the consumer owns, okay? What they think about your company. The question is, how do you want them to think? And when you get them to think the way that you want them to think, that becomes equity. You getting this? Yeah. Okay? I gotta get a show of hands to get that you guys are getting this, because I know, if I'm going too fast, right? So what are some of the things to build the brand equity? What are some of the things to build customer perception, look and feel and tone and voice, the personality behind the brand, the customer experience, reputation, loyalty, the positioning, brand awareness, storytelling, the promise, positive attributes, values, philosophy, brand response. Brand response, by the way, is really important. I think it was like Tylenol, remember back in the 90s or late 80s, someone put cyanide in a capsule. They were so freaking smart, they responded so fast that they made tablets. That saved their ass. Now, I'm not going to get political, but with politicians, if they don't make a correction, be truthful, that kills them. Does that make sense? Because it loses the trust in the consumer's mind. And it takes so much time to build that trust, and it could collapse overnight. But if they're straight about it, and they come on TV and say, hey, I made a big mistake, da-da-da, that would change the perception because we're human. Okay? Do you see how this works? As much as it works for people, think of a brand as a person. It has a soul, it has a heart, it has a look and feel, and it has a skeletal, okay? And it dresses a particular way. So I'm now going to go into some case studies, how this all comes together. And this is for you guys to reflect on your company, okay? So business and brand makeover. So our model, and I was telling Robert, it took me 15 years to develop this model, to work for every industry, every category, create categories, B2B, B2C, B2G, anywhere you're on the Fortune 5, or anywhere you're on a business cycle, and for entrepreneurs in Fortune 100. So I work with clients that are literally starting from scratch. I've worked with college students, and then all the way to the big boys, okay? It's more about the different, for me, how I pick my clients is the difference they're gonna make for people. That's how I pick them. And I have to like them too. Because we gotta have fun, right? Life's too short. Anyway, so Eldis, this is a B2B company, okay? So Eldis is a manufacturing, distribution, and packaging materials company. They package parts for their clients' facilities, okay, or theirs. So this could be like Honda, this could be like, Mitsubishi, right? They provide warehousing and MRO, maintenance, repair, and operations, and management services, okay? So it's pretty exciting, right? Okay, so this is hardcore B2B, okay? So I only point this out because branding, as long as you have a customer, branding matters, because a lot of B2B companies go, oh, or governments, especially governments, oh, we don't need branding. Well, do you want a customer? Okay? So this is a challenge. They lack business growth. They couldn't grow. Inability to scale their business. Unsatisfied with the market share they owned. Confused message to vendors. Weak business model. Okay? So we do these 3-day intensives. And the idea behind these 3 days intensives is to save decades of mistakes and redos on companies. So this just gives you an idea. It's a tough 3 days, but again, we're creating the DNA for any size company and to get the right foundation to begin with, okay, and the right principles in place. It ends up being about 75 pages. So anyways, to build a multi-million-dollar, and I have built $7 billion companies from these strategy sessions. Rebuild a more relevant, so what happened is that we looked at rebuilding a more relevant business model for today's market, for higher revenue and profits. Create a culture that thrives because their inside culture was not thriving. It didn't have a clear direction. Redefine the roles and decision charts. We found that they had the right people, but in the wrong roles, okay? It's really changing the culture as well. Creating a compelling, unique selling proposition, and we created what's called a unique buying proposition. Unique selling proposition is what you're taught in marketing school, but that's not enough nowadays because there's too many products and services on the market. You have to come from a unique buying proposition. What is the consumer buying into, not what you're selling? They have to come up to their own conclusion on their own. Does that make sense? Okay, really important to get. So we created a whole new process. Before becoming loyal to one brand, 91% of consumers look for authenticity. These are facts I pulled from the website, right? So 91% have to look for authenticity. What is going to make your company so authentic, it'll be difficult to duplicate? That's what I look for. What's the true differentiations? And build from that. With this company, so I have 500 designers, are all like world-class, award-winning designers, okay? And I work with all of them to build brand marks, not logos. So each one of these had a story from the strategy session and had the science, and we looked at the trade marketability as well with their attorneys, okay? We landed on one. Okay, after we got through the black and white, so then you're unbiased with the color, then we get into the color theory, okay? And so we went through a lot of different color theories from the finalist ones, the semi-finalists of the brand marks. And the brand marks have to differentiate from your competition, and they have to, again, work the size of a dime, because what they want to do is stamp on products for private labeling. So you got to look at the use of your identity through different media to figure out what would be the best fit. It's not just websites, right? It's not just a brochure. You got to look at all the media into the future from the business model of how it would expand. Okay, so this is giving you an idea of just from the standpoint of color choices and the color studies that we do. That's the old one. And by the way, this company, we took away containers because in a strategy session, they had a stranglehold on themselves. They're leaving 75% of the money on the table because they're identifying as containers, but as we figured out their system, they're much more than just containers. Does that make sense? A lot of times people have the wrong name that won't allow for scaling, growth, and value, okay? So this is the mark that we came up with, and then we're able to get alldes.com. You know, sometimes it might take a couple years, but it's worth getting the .com, okay? You might get the .net, .org, .co, but it's worth it in the long run if you're in for the long haul, because now the company's valuation went way up. You see how this is tied into business? Okay? Now this is the way it used to look like, okay? Their old website, but it wasn't very compelling as far as the storytelling. Most websites are all thrown together, but there isn't a system of how you're reading it. And the way that you read from a design standpoint, you read dominant, subdominant, and subordinate, so your eye can get moved to a certain direction. You're directing the eye. Most websites, everything's thrown together. And especially now with all these template websites, people are throwing stuff together and not making any sense. And you know what? You're not getting a consumer that way, okay? So this is what they used to look like, right? And so I say you can't compete in today's economy with a brand from yesterday. Okay? If you look at technology speeding up, nearly 8 out of 10 people want to see you going out of your way producing a custom touch points, not generic, meaning not stock images, not using template. Because you know what? It's showing that you don't care about your customer. It's showing that you're generic. Okay? Is this making sense? Yeah. Your brand should be the best representation of your future potential. The smartest companies do this. That's why Apple has gone where it's gone, okay? Xerox, Disney, the list goes on. Because they understand the psychology and they understand there's value behind that, because if you don't win over customers, you have no business, okay? So this is what we created for them, and then we widen their business model. I know it's kind of small on the screen, but what's called above the fold is the most important information. We said right away what their value proposition is right away above the fold by what's called a carousel imaging. So then we showed them, okay, here's the inventory management distribution system that we have on site, or we could do it in your location. And here's the packaging solutions that we could do for you. Okay, and then here's our production line services, which was gigantuous because they didn't even know they were sitting on this until we started doing a strategy. And this became this was a golden ticket, man. I could tell you, because this production line services allowed us to move in vertical markets where they're only focused on automotive. I said, oh my God, dudes, you actually have a process that it can be used and migrated for every industry. And let's capitalize on the system, and let's create a name for it that you own this, okay? So anyways, that's a lot of it too. What I love to do is build intellectual property, because when you sell your company, a lot of that intellectual property is what you're selling, right? Is your systems and process, not on just the inside, but the outside too. So anyways, we created this for them. We showed all the big companies they started to work with for, okay, Toyota, right? And then we showed very quickly, visually, You know, their services that they provide. Rules have changed, as you probably know now. People are more visual, so you have to have stimulating visual images that they want to work through and less copy. But good, not less copy, I should say, concise, clear copy. Concise and clear copy. Okay? So the measurable results of this: a robust problem-solving business model adaptable for an array of industries, which now they're in. If you search them, they're all over the internet. Clarity of their vision, philosophy, purpose, values, and culture. We redefine the roles and structured a hierarchy as far as like who's going to be a decision maker and what role, right? And as I said, I think I told you, Robert, it's like if it's not your genius, it's not your job, okay? And we talked about business owners need to let go and let the geniuses on your team do their job. That's how you're going to be able to grow. Define, okay, extend customer sales cycle. We extended the customer size cycle as well because we're offering more services. They do one service, then we offer another service behind that. Now we have a long-term, what's called a long tail customer, rather than just a one-off. Okay? Business cycle could grow and scale, increase market share in various industries. A world-class authentic brand builds brand equity and value. Okay? Here's WSS, which is now in Las Vegas, is a men's athletic wear, okay? Established in 1983, started in a swap meet, okay? And they have 300 styles of stocks at any given time, and they have 80 brands. So they have Nike, Air Jordan, all the big brands that all the companies would love to have in that space. During 2008, we had a radical recession, right? I joined them in 2010, and they had a radical decrease, a 10% loss per year, lack of demographic reach, poor identity, weak relationship with key buyers. I'm going to show you now a B2C case and a B2B case. Price-driven versus value-driven. Even though they kept saying we're value-driven, quality-driven, we're not price-driven. Okay, so went through a DNA of the business brand and the consumer. And just to show you quick, is getting a clear, concise vision of philosophy. Just on the first day, they've been in business for 25 years, working with the owner, Eric Alon, the founder. After that first day, all the VPs said, Howard, we're now clear of where we're heading with the company. Because the owner, the president, the founder could not articulate where they're heading with the company. So everybody was doing their own thing, what I call working in silos. You gotta have the Northern Light to focus on, okay? And that's really the vision. A collaboration, a culture, expanding ideal customers for revenue, proper sequence of rebranding. Okay, that's what the major things that came out. This is what they used to look like, okay? So they actually had an in-house branding, marketing, PR company, but they weren't doing branding, even though they say they're doing branding, okay? They were just throwing things together, which is pretty typical as a graphic designer, but not looking at it as a system in process. Big difference. This is all the big brands that they carried. And this is what we came up with as far as different brand marks. I'm just showing you a few of them. So they want to have everything on the store floor, not in the back of the room, so warehouse fill. They have the smallest, they sell the smallest shoe to the biggest shoes. They do 365 events a year. So you see how then the brand mark holds some of the storytelling within the mark itself, right? This is how they used to look like. And we lost and we got rid of warehouse shoe sale because it felt like it was a price-driven company, even though they kept saying they were value-driven because they had the best shoes that anyone store could offer in that space. So we changed it to just WSS, and then we gave them a tagline, shoe style and selection, okay? Because he was about to go, hey, Howard, I think we should just move everything online. Because all their stores, they owned all their retail spaces. And I said, here's the problem. It's not about being online or offline. It's that the brick and mortar has not been disrupted with a new way to create an experience for the consumer. And I said, I'll help you do that. We'll create a new experience and why people will want to still go to brick and mortars, okay? So these are the touch points that we had to design. I call them aspiration engagement points. We had to redesign all 52 stores, all the signage, all the billboards, all the radio spots, TV spots, all the interiors. Like, we're talking about thousands of touch points, okay? Literally thousands. Just even the lighting, what kind of photographer style do we want to use to reflect the personality of the brand of who we're attracting, okay? This is the before, what they used to look like, and it kind of looks like, it does look like a swap meet feel, because he came from a swap meet selling shoes out of his van. And let me just show you, this is our new design, where out of all the shoe stores that are out there, they sold more shoes than anybody else, more different brands. They had the biggest selection. I say, here's your value proposition, both the buying and selling. We're gonna wrap all the big brands that you carry and create signage and wrap them around the entire store. So people from a mile away know exactly who you are and what you sell and why they should shop there in a matter of a second. And it worked. They gave us 4 stores to do. We completely redesigned. I work with everybody on the front line. Okay, so I'm very hands-on. I work with all the production crew. From the standpoint of the signage, I had to sign off on everything. And then that was just the exterior. I'm not even talking about the interior yet. And then we create what are called lifestyle images of who we're selling to and who are our main shoppers and have them close to the entrance. They are a private company. They go, we don't want to raise money. We want to use our own money. How can we generate more revenue streams? I said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to have them sponsor their logo close to the entrance and pay premium. And it worked. I could show you like 5 revenue streams I created for them when they didn't have any to offset the cost. Here again is a company that was about to sink. And this is their billboard. Now here's the B2B play. This is the billboard, but you really can't even tell who the company is because you only have 1.3 seconds when you're driving down on a freeway to absorb a billboard or a street banner. So the company, the people in the house, didn't understand the fundamental principles of all media. And every media has a core principle. And if you don't know that, and if you weren't trained, you're throwing your money away. So they're throwing money away constantly for 25 years. So anyways, they go, Howard, we've been trying to get Nike or Jordan, Cat to to be sponsored for billboards to offset the cost, but no one's buying in. They're saying, hey, you know what? You guys are just lucky that we're on your billboard because your billboards look like crap. Because they look like they're price-driven, not value-driven. Cat, Nike, Air Jordan, they're all value-driven, but they're projecting that they're price-driven. Come to us, we'll sell it for the cheapest. Did you see this? Okay? So what we did is we redesigned the master look and feel. So now you're clear of who the company is and what they're selling. This became a master blueprint for all billboards throughout every city as they started to grow as far as a system. Does that make sense? Again, brand identity is about creating systems. It's not graphic designs or advertising or creating one-off. Those are parts of the whole, but that itself is not the sum of the whole by doing just graphic design, okay? So here's the vehicle wrap. This is a new vehicle wrap. And then we want to create a website that looked better than Nike's, which we did, because we figured out how the shopper was shopping. We figured out Nike had the wrong order how most people shop. So we knew that with the fewer clicks, and we created an experience to the consumer, the likelihood that they were going to buy was higher percentage. You see that? Okay, so anyway, so we redesigned everything for them. And then we start working on the interiors. Had many other opportunities to co-brand and sell positions for revenue streams. This is the latest one by Union Street by the Staples Center. So when they did a grand opening, right, they're urban, right? And I said, here's your number 1 customer is the urban. I said, you're by the Staples Center. This is where all the big playoffs happen, the games happen, the basketball games, right, the Lakers. I said, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna get Snoop Dogg to DJ for us for our opening and get customers aware of who we are and what we stand for. And it worked. Because no one was doing DJing in stores. And that was one of the things that we came up with, let's disrupt the space, right? The other thing that we did that disrupt the space is like, let's set up goalie areas so people could try on the shoes and experience the brand. It's kind of like you get in the car You know, it's very difficult once you get in that car, the car that you really want, very difficult not to want to purchase it because your emotions are now tied in. It's emotions first and then intellect second with every buying decision, whether if you're aware of it or not. It usually happens on the subconscious level, okay? So the customers with an emotional connection with an authentic brand stay with them 5.1 years versus 3.4, okay? These are facts, again, pulled from the websites, off the internet. These are just, again, how we manage the brand is we create these brand Bibles. People now create brand style guides, super important, colors, fonts, but we go way beyond that. We go, what is the core value? What's our style? What's our personality of the brand? So therefore, everybody internally is on the same page, as much as all the third-party vendors are on the same page, as much as all your vendors and strategic alliances are on the same page. This is how you govern the brand to be able to scale and grow. You have to create systems. If you don't create systems, you're going to put a lot of fires out, and it's going to get very expensive for you, okay? So anyway, so the results was this. We created 4 companies, we redid 4 of the exteriors, and I said you have a 10%, I have projected 10% growth, because they're losing 10% per year, this is during the recession, and I have it on film, because I was talking, the CFO called me to his office, and he goes, Howard, you won't believe this. And he says, we have a increase of 200% in 7 months on the 4 stores that were rebranded just on exterior, not even the interior, but people were shopping. And then that's when the president said, we want you to redesign all 52 stores in the next year, which we did. We redid all their stores in a year. It was a big undertaking, but we did it. The increase in the website was 1,600% the year after that. Here's what's really important from the B2B play. Strong partnerships with the key vendors, Nike, Adidas, Fila, Vans, Puma, and the list goes on. They did not have strong relationships back then. So in a strategy session, I look at all the problems that everyone's having in an organization, and then we work as a team to look at how we can resolve that problem by creating a right culture and designing the business from the inside out and from the outside in. Does that make sense? Okay, so multiple sources of revenue, where they only had retail, we then expand our website and then events. Increased market share, various demographics, 54 stores, and then now there are over 100 stores in 4 years, and they're about to collapse when I came to them, okay? So, and then we were placed in, I was written up in the LA Times in the business section. I didn't even know this. My sister took this photo, and it talked about how we created them as a billion-dollar company, okay? So again, if you put the right principles in place, the right DNA, you know, and you have the right people in place and the right product and right business plan, you really could take off, okay? So I asked you this question, does your brand reflect the best image, etched image, in the mind and heart of your customer? What signals and what messages are you sending right now to your customers through your marketing, advertising, social media? Are they all orchestrated of what truly differentiates you, and is it authentic? Okay, just think about it, okay? And what is it costing you by not having the right image in the consumer's mind? Okay, so what is it costing you by not having a world-class brand in the mind of the consumer, whether you're just starting off, okay, under $1 million or you're already a billion-dollar company? The principles are still the same. If you want a business, you have to have customers. If you want customers, you have to push and invite them emotionally first. And you have to have a product and service and information they want. Or let's put it this way, they might not even know they want it until they experience, like Apple's philosophy, and I'm firm believers in this, they don't believe in focus groups because the people don't know what they want yet. The iPhone would never have existed. This would have never existed. People laugh when I had a Mac. They, oh, you're the oddball. This is back in '87, right? The point being is that if you design from the future potential, you're going to end up with a stronger result. Okay? So how many of you receive value? Okay? And we'll get to Q&A. Okay? So what I do is I offer a live one-on-one online, it's online, a brand assessment for companies. This is where I start with every company. I don't care if you're a startup or a billion-dollar company, you got to first figure out where are you, where do you want to go, and how that gap gets filled. I should say bridged, okay? So when I work with people online and to realize their blind spot, realize their potential, and then to bridge the gap from good to great. So I'm going to show you just an example of one of hundreds of strategies I've done as far as assessments. Okay, so this is Masterpan. They had not able to reach their sales goal, no value proposition, poor online customer experience, weak brand identity. This is typical. Now all this stuff is for you guys, but think about it. Most websites look like this. It's all thrown at you at once. There is no reading sequence, and there's no way of telling what they're selling, okay? This is so typical, okay? So what I do is I do it live, I use Zoom, and I mark up and I say, where's your value proposition? What's innovative about this? Usually I have a 15-minute conversation about who you are, where you're taking the company, what are your obstacles, and what are your goals, okay? That's where I usually start. And then we get into, well, let's take a look at your website, your logo, your product design, and your packaging. I usually review up to 5 pieces, and I work very quickly. And I mark up, I go, what kind of pan is this? What does this actually do? And he finally got to me, and he told me, he says, it cooks a full meal in one pan. It's never on the website. So a lot of times I have these 15-minute conversations ahead of time, because 99.99% of the time, the client is saying what they really want to say, but what's being said through their identity is not equal to that. You see that? Okay? So they weren't doing any sales before this, but it's for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and it's geared towards, and someone brought it up, it's geared for women now, but it was geared towards men, usually college kids, okay, that really want to cook something fast in a pan, okay? The other thing that they had when I start getting into how long have they been in business, where you've been, da-da-da, they've been on TV, HSN, Oz Show. None of that was on a website above the fold. Above the fold, meaning that you don't have to scroll down further, is your most important real estate, and you should just nail the consumer between the eyes in a nice way of what you do and why they should scroll further down. Okay, and build that trust as they're scrolling down, right? Anyway, so the other thing too is I said, I bet you in the conversation, I got that he had other product ideas too. I said, oh my God, well, we need to work on, right now, we need to work on your brand architecture / business architecture, and we need to have a parent company above that. And so I helped him look up, I said, we got to get Master Coreware. So that became then masterwares.com, we got that. And then we looked on USPTO and trademark search. I'm not an attorney, but I know how they work because I work with a lot of attorneys. And we're able to figure out how these guys were positioned and what makes us different, that I knew that we could get that category. Does that make sense? Because that would be everything to the company when they want to grow, is getting the right name in place and the right sequence and a right quote unquote parent company in place, okay? So anyways, this is the rest of the website. After we got done with them, they sent back the website. So now they have a clear and concise message, easy website to navigate, positive feedback, and of course a radical in sales. He wrote me this really nice email, the increase in sales, and now people understood what the product is. More sustainable and scalable brand, okay? So what I'm offering, can I explain my offer? Yeah. Okay. So it's usually $3,000. I guarantee you'll get $10,000 worth of value in these evaluations because it's taken 35 years and working with several Fortune 500 companies. But the point being is that, you know, I'm doing it today for $500, and I got a form here if you're interested to fill out your name, credit card information, and then sign it, okay? And that's my information, okay? The code, which I love those codes now. I never used them before until COVID. I think they're brilliant. See, it takes a wave sometimes to make something work, right? Anyways, now I'm open to Q&A. I'm sure you guys have questions around your business, your brand. What are some of the, let me put it this way, what are some of the challenges you're facing with your company right now that you don't see a way out, for example, okay? Another way to looking at the Q&A, what did you see for yourself that you didn't see for your company before, okay? So I'll be nice, it'll be easy, but who has a question? They do that great a job, everyone understands this? Someone must have a question. Don't be shy. Well, I want to pick on someone then. I'm going to pick on you. Oh, what's that?
Some of my clients are franchise owners.
Okay.
And are there constraints that the franchise encumber them with that you have to help them with that you wind up not being able to help them because they're encumbered by the franchise?
Well, that's funny because I say it's a brand within the brand, and you're right. It depends on how they're regulated, okay? Because I do work with a lot of individuals, like people that work for, let's say, for a real estate company, and they still have the competition, which is the other realtors in the space, right? And even in their office. So a lot of times I have to brand them as a personality brand within the organization. So yes, there's ways of branding within the brand when it comes to franchising, and it's looking at what the do's and don'ts are as well. And some, you think that some of these big real estate companies have it all together, and a lot of them, there's a lot of loopholes, so then we could do some really unique branding within the company without getting in trouble legally. So yes. Any other question? Let's pick on you. What's your business? What's your name?
My name is Darnell Journey.
Okay, and what's your business?
We run an opportunity fund in Las Vegas, on the west side of Las Vegas. So yes.
Cool.
That's our business.
And then what is it that you do to make a difference for people?
Well, what we do to make a difference for people, we help the existing stakeholders in opportunity zones preserve their wealth, provide jobs and training to youth, and at the end of our process, we house homeless men and women, veterans.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really cool. So where are you at in your process? Are you just starting? Or are you a couple years in? Or?
Well, of course, we operate in an opportunity zone, so they're probably only 3 to 4 years old at this moment. We've been doing what we're doing for the last couple of years, but really picking up at this moment with projects being finished and housing homeless veterans.
That's awesome. So what do you think is the number one challenge right now for you? Is it the staffing? What do you feel is your biggest challenge in the growth or what you want to achieve?
Being that we're in an opportunity zone, of course, we look for high net worth individuals with capital gains to come and invest into those areas so that the work can continue on. So it's identifying those high net worth value individuals and then finding the right core message to reach out to those high net individuals, and then the follow-up system and process to keep them retained. That's what we hope to do.
Cool. And what do you use right now for your core message?
We tell the story of where we are. We're on the historic west side of Las Vegas, where from the 1950s to maybe the 40s to the 60s, where a lot of great African-American entertainers, stars, football players, baseball players, and things of this nature actually dwelled over there at a time when segregation and things of this nature, a lot of those type of entertainers could not stay inside of the hotels, and they would come over to the west side of Las Vegas and stay and perform and build up that area over there. So we have Joe Louis, Lou Rawls, Ella Fitzgerald, everyone that you can possibly think of has dwelled in that area. And now the city has a great push to redevelop the area and repackage that history, and then of course open it up to tourism.
Cool. And what are you doing as far as what channels are you using to promote what you do? Like, how are you getting in front of people, in other words?
Trade shows, actually, and then working with a strong team of individuals. It's kind of a unique position to be in. It's not the normal marketing from a department store or sales of anything like that. So our marketing and our outreach process is one of these types of situations, meetings, conventions, and things of that nature.
Great. Do you also speak? Are you also a sponsor at some of the bigger events or charity events?
Not at the moment in Las Vegas, but we are creating those events ourselves. So, for instance, we'll be finished with a project in probably close to the end of October. And at that point in time, of course, politicians, news, a lot of our community, we kind of hold like an open house to the community, though, and not an open house to just like if we were selling to an individual. We're bringing the community to the project so that they can then see it live, see how it works, see how it benefits them, and then also go on to see how they can be a part of the process as well.
Got it. Yeah, because I like how it works from the individual first, and then it goes and it does a ripple thing to the outside of the community. And I like too that you use a lot of good names as far as like, you know, who's been in this space, right? So it's like what I think about is like, God, this is great for a PR piece. PR piece, and especially what's taking place now, you know, with all the media, as far as equality and everything else. This is such a perfect opportunity for a great PR piece. So I'd highly recommend that you actually network with PR companies, right, that want things that are newsworthy, that reach to their demographic, okay, these high affluent people, right? And also, you know, I think that works well is silent auctions. I mean, if you had like, you know, Fitzgerald and a lot of these celebrities, and you happen to have a few things from maybe it's passed down from generation to generation, and that'd be so freaking cool, because those always work well to raise money, great awareness, and then it gives you an opportunity to be a spokesperson as well at these events. But there's all kinds of things that are going through my mind to really.
Thank you, though. Appreciate it.
Yeah, but I love this. I've heard a lot of good things about opportunity zones, because it really is a win-win-win. People know what the opportunity zone is. I think it's brilliant. You know, everyone gets to win in a space. Yeah, cool. Very cool. Sure.
You know, you talked about this master plan website and
Yes.
the revisions you made to it. What did these guys do to get more traffic to their website? Because that really is the key to making the sales on the site, right? No matter what their brand is, if people don't know the website's out there, they're never going to go there, right?
You're right. So there's first thing is building the right brand. You're right. And then the second thing is the marketing that brand. The way they had it was first a generic, which wasn't getting any attention. So they had a marketing team, is that they were marketing the wrong message. Do you see that, you guys? But after we got done with rebranding and with the right identity, it was just done within an hour. It's just to show them what their blind spots are, right? But then they brought it back to their design team, and then they made the changes. And then you're right, they had the market. They weren't doing any difference when it came to the mechanics of the marketing. They just had a different message to send through the channel. Does that make sense? And it was nailing people, you know, in the head as far as, oh, this is for me. So that's what happened. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Give me some fundamental components. If I own a business right now, what are some fundamental components that I can look for, look at, and tell me I have a good brand?
So what I look for when I do these assessments is, first of all, the business model, how sustainable is it, and then what is the relevancy of the market today, like the economics, okay, of what's taking place. And then what I always look for are some of these components, which I call the DNA to the brand, right? And this is how I figured out, was actually helping out Fortune 500 companies understand how they made it. Strong philosophy, okay? Why you're in business to begin with. A vision to take everybody to, not to arrive, but to take people to. Basically, the way I define a vision is a legacy you're leaving behind. What legacy you're leaving behind for humanity? It just gives you a bigger game to play with versus a mission statement. A mission statement for me, it's old school. It's not enough if you really want to scale, okay? So the third thing is a brand promise, is what are you promising your customers that you're going to give them versus anybody else? So for example, I said this example this morning was, you know, we had Hertz. And remember, Hertz was pretty much the only dog in town when it came to car rentals. And then Avis came in town, and Avis knew that they were not number one because Hertz was number one. What can they do differently that mattered to the consumer? And that was more customer service. And that's why they said the tagline, "We try harder." That brought them to number one the next year. Another one would be like, okay, remember the post office is still around, and sometimes, you know, it takes forever to get something in the mail. FedEx came because they knew when it came to business people that a lot of times you need stuff overnight. I remember I used to go to the airport and drop off a package to get delivered to my client. That was the way I was used to do back in the 80s, right? Oh my God, I was crazy. Anyways, it worked. But the point being is that that's where their promise was absolutely positively guaranteed overnight. A lot of times the tagline is the distillation of their overall position that they're promising the consumer is a strong tagline, or the think different one. My brother actually came up with that. He helped out Steve, but anyways, he came up with a think different campaign. And that was all about, hey, we're not PC, we're Mac, we think differently, right? So brand promise, vision, okay, philosophy, and then what we talked about in your class was brand personality, okay? And this happens across the board, whether you're a small company just starting off. The point being is having the right principle and right foundation in place so then you don't have to go back to the drawing board. That's where companies really lose a lot of traction, or they might lose it to competition. So brand personality, the best way I can explain this is again with the automobile insurance companies. You got the Mahan guy for all, for Allstate. You got Flo for Progressive, and then you got the Gecko Lizard for Geico, right? The reason why they create the personality, and you got all these personalities for different brands, and it's very genius. Mickey Mouse for Disney, right? It's all about creating connections and building a trust, building a bond to the consumer. Again, think of a brand like a person. It has a look, a feel, a tone, a voice, and it has something to say, okay? And something to serve as well. So that's another thing, is the brand personality. Another thing that I look at is their brand mark, is a logo or brand mark. Then I look for consistency. If they show me, hey, how I review our website, review our pitch deck, review our brochure, I then look for consistency. Are you using the same fonts? Are you using the same colors? But not only that, is the story of the content of your copy have the same tone? Is it serious? Is it humorous? These are all reflection about the brand of what it wants to stand for and how it wants to connect, okay? And I can give you more. You want more? There's attributes, okay? The attributes are the fine finesse things that help improve marketing and advertising. A brand attribute would be like, here's what a brand attribute is. We created a chart where here's the problem for the consumer, or the challenge, the problem. Here's the solution that we create for that problem. And then here's the aspiration of what the consumer receives by your solution. You see that? It goes further than a SWOT analysis. SWOT analysis, strength, weakness. This is like, we created this because we found that a lot of marketing tools are not useful today. They're not as effective because there's more product and service than ever before. You always have to think ahead, okay, and go to the cream of the crop and look like you're always above everything else, right? So when you look from the consumer's perspective of what might be challenging, for example, someone here give me an example that you heard from one of your customers or group of customers that they have a complaint about your product or service or information, okay? So someone bring up something that you go, hey, this is what runs in our company, here's a problem that we have, and I'll give you an example how we can move through that.
Call and keep getting your voicemail.
Okay, what was that?
I call and keep getting your voicemail.
Okay.
Can't get through to you.
Okay. So if the company was aware of this, now it's very easy to hire, okay, an outsourced company to pick up the phone call on the first ring. Not only that, the way I would do it is then have a script, not so it sounds like a script, but it feels very natural, that when someone picks it up, they come from service. And they have to have the right personality, the right traits that feel like that person's going to feel like you're going to be supported, and you can talk easily to that person and get what you want. Because nowadays, it's so difficult through these phone trees. And the companies that, like I'm working right now, I forgot who was telling, redoing my whole front yard. And I get to the contractor with one text and he'll answer with me within about 15 seconds. I love it. I'm hiring him for another projects. Okay? So much of that personal touch is missing right now, and customer service has gone through shit. Okay, excuse my language, it's true. So if you bring that up and you create a script where that person feels very comfortable, and now the whole sales team is on that script to make that everybody feel comfortable, do you think you have a likelihood to build trust that they want to do business with you faster than the next guy that gets an answer machine?
Yeah.
Okay? So that's just an example. So you want to go from what would be the aspiration from the consumer. Most people are looking through a one-way street going, I want to push this out, I want to push this out. And they're not looking enough from what does a consumer want that would actually change your lifestyle?
One of the things I liked about our conversation this morning is when you talked about the websites of the companies that show only features.
Right, right.
And what they really need to show is benefits, and that kind of, in our conversation this morning, that led to the comparison between Progressive and Farmers.
Right.
Because Progressive, the message there is, well, if you bundle it, we're going to save you money. But the message with Farmers is, oh, you had this problem claim, don't worry, we've seen that before, we can help you. So they're talking about how are we going to benefit you as opposed to just a quick, hey, we're going to save you money. But on the back end, you can make a claim and they're going to go, oh, yeah, we don't do that. Yeah. We don't do that. But again, I like that features, what you really need to put is benefits.
Exactly, and that's a really great point because I think Farmers does a brilliant job as their brand, creating their brand identity and through the storytelling of what would be a consumer's journey if they, ran a boat, had a boat on the back of their trailer and it hit some house, and most companies wouldn't cover that, but they cover that. And I think they did a brilliant job because they figured out the hole in the marketplace and they created a core message. What a core message is your underlining message that all offshoots through your PR, your marketing, through advertising, all is anchored through that core message, what differentiates you.
Well, I'll also tell you, I think I mentioned that I looked at Consumer Reports, had a rating of all the insurance companies and how they did on claims, and Farmers actually rated pretty low. So they probably saw that message, and then this is their effort to turn their brand around and get a whole different approach.
Exactly. Because they weren't, but you're right, in the past, who knew Farmers? They were just, for me, like a commodity, they were generic.
What I love is Farmers and a lot of these things, like Red Robin does. So those commercials come on, and my kids, it's like, we are Farmers, and my kids go, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Yeah, the kids are like, what did I call it?
That's where you get, that's funny because that's what's called a jingle. And you get people, remember, the spaghetti commercial, I can't believe I ate the whole thing. Am I dating myself? But there were some great jingles that people kept reciting because they're memorable. Okay, and the idea that we talked about is a lot of times that advertising is not designed for a direct sell. It's to create awareness. Most people use advertising incorrectly, by the way. It's only create awareness that you exist and you stand for this. And when the consumer's ready, then they look at the opportunity of purchasing something from you. Okay? It's different than direct sales when it comes to specifically with online marketing. Very different. Most people get screwed up with that. Yes, sir.
When you say that if you have a strong enough brand that you create, you actually create products, brand new products to launch from that brand, because a lot of times you see business owners that launch products that try to fit them into their current branding, it doesn't work.
Right, exactly. So a lot of companies when we work with, whether it's technology or products, a lot of times they might be building something for another company, and then we look at the contract. Well, I don't. I let my attorneys look at the contract, right, to see where the holes are, and then create private labeling. Because now the way, like what I didn't show you, is another huge major case study with Myler Butler. They're vertically integrated. They're manufacturers, distributors, and they have the retail. And they weren't putting any emphasis on their private label that had the biggest margins because their packaging looked like crap. But when we rebranded the whole thing, they then were making a lot more money because, of course, that was their margins. They weren't looking at the margins. When we started looking at the margins, they made a lot of money after the rebranding of their private label. We still have the other resources and revenue streams coming in from their partnership, but you're absolutely right. There's opportunities for companies to create their own and then actually be known for it as well. And that's where, I'm a big fan as far as like articles and being PR for peer-to-peer. When you're in a peer-to-peer situation, let's say, whatever, it's a manufacturing of a product and there's a magazine that's peer-to-peer, those are great opportunities to not create an ad, but to create an article. You see the difference? You're educating at that point, you're pulling people in. I think my time's up.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Howard Lim! Howard!
Good job, buddy. Thank you so much. Oh, can you ask where the shoots are?
Oh, we already have a
Okay.
Thank you so much, everybody.